What's up, everybody? This is Brian Graham with the Property Pilot Podcast, and this is episode 7, The Importance of Due Diligence in Real Estate. So there are 5 main forms of due diligence when deciding what homes to buy, where to buy them, how much to buy them for. That's going to be decided first with your strategy. You have to determine what your strategy is going to be. You have to do the due diligence within your own life, due diligence of your finances, the due diligence of how much money you're willing to invest, how much money do you even have, what is your overall cash flow. You've got to save up a certain amount. That may be talking with your wife or your husband about what you guys are even willing to risk. So doing the due diligence on your own personal finances is the number one thing, because that may determine what type of strategy that you do. You don't, of course, need your own money. You could use other people's money if they don't have the time themselves. You can use their money to invest. But determining your strategy is is that first phase of due diligence before you move into the next phase. And so the next phase would be you need to decide where you're going to invest. Now, it's important to go through your due diligence with where that's going to be and how you're going to do that there. So let's define due diligence. You can look it up on Google, of course, but in layman's terms, due diligence is your ability to do research and vet what decisions you're going to make, to really take a step back and decide, is this investment good for me? That, in doing all of your research within whatever topic, that is doing due diligence to figure out whether or not this investment is going to be good for you. So after you've chosen your strategy and gone through, your own finances and your own decision making about that with a fine-tooth comb, then you're going to decide where it is you're going to invest. What state are you going to choose? I'm specifically talking about the United States. So what state are you going to choose? What part of the country? So that may be you're looking for an extremely high value investment, meaning you're going to go to a very high populated area, but you should look at the laws there. So if you're looking for long-term cash flow, you want to be protected as a landlord. If you're looking for high risk for Airbnb investments, you want to make sure that you don't just willy-nilly buy a property and then you come to find out that the local law is that you're not even allowed to Airbnb it because the local laws are there to protect hotels and they don't allow Airbnb. So you have to do your due diligence to figure out where it is you're going to invest, because if you research parts of Miami or parts of Texas and you're expecting to do an Airbnb, they may not let you. And so if you spend $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 on a home thinking you're going to list it on Airbnb, then you're not allowed. Well, that's the exact due diligence that we're talking about. So once you've chosen your state, then you need to figure out what city or town. So obviously you see we start with this big microscope and then we start to get narrower and narrower. So now I've chosen my city or town. I need to figure out, what is that city or town good for? Like what draws people there? Are the rents good? Is it a high turnover rate? For example, I know that Memphis, Tennessee has a rental rate of, I think it's about 52 to 55%. It may even be more. That means 52 to 55% of the people rent homes there. So if you're looking to find a renter, it's probably more like an 80 or 90% chance that you'll find a renter, because 56% of the population is renting. So there's a vast majority of people that are looking for homes because the supply is so little, and most people don't really know how to handle their own finances. So qualifying for homes to buy are going to be a little tougher for them. So doing your due diligence on situations like that. So there may be rural towns where the ownership is 56 to 70, 60, 70%. So finding a renter may be difficult because most people own their own homes. So doing certain due diligence and research to figure out, is that city or town I'm investing in going to be worth it? Because it may sit vacant for 2, 3, 4 months at a time while I find a new tenant. And if the rent is too high, you add in high rent on top of that, they may not be willing to rent from you. So then once you've chosen your city or town and you start to, narrow in that microscope, the next best thing to do your due diligence on is the neighborhood. So here in real estate, we classify neighborhoods as A, B, C, or D class investments. So that would be an A class neighborhood, which is usually high value homes, very low crime, and think of them as, your friendly neighborhood families and so on, where there's not really a lot of crap, quote unquote, going on. Your B neighborhoods are going to be higher value homes than that would be of like a C class neighborhood. There's not, they're not as high value as A class, but there's still room for growth. And you may be able to find a diamond in the rough if you're looking to do like a BRRRR strategy where you're finding a distressed home or a distressed buyer and you can flip it up. There could be a lot of potential for money to be made there. Your C class neighborhood would be struggling neighborhoods. They're not horrible. There's some spots of crime, but there's a lot of potential to be made where you can find, good people, but lower income, and or distressed buyers, distressed sellers, distressed properties where you can buy and create a lot of sweat equity, a lot of value in those homes by fixing them up and refinancing them or fixing them up and selling them for flips. And then we have D class neighborhoods, and these would be classified as most likely neighborhoods you want to stay away from in terms of investing, where there's a very, very low ceiling on how much those homes are going to be valued. There's usually high crime in these areas. Turnover for, these are like, drugs going on in your homes. Turnover is going to be turnover may be low. Cash flow could be high, but, these areas may give you more problems than what you want. You really want tenants that are going to be reliable. They're going to not do, crime in your house, whether that's dealing drugs or housing weapons or whatever that might be. And, worst case scenario, somebody calls the police on them or police end up in your home and then they find some sort of, product and then they're knocking on your door wondering what the hell's going on. So those would be the, different classifications. And I highly recommend that you work with your real estate team, your real estate agent, your property manager, your title attorneys or lawyers that may be local to those areas, and ask them, hey, what are your recommendations on these different properties I should invest in? What are your recommendations on these areas? And I highly recommend that you don't ask just your real estate agent. Your real estate agent should be one of the most important people, if not the most important person in your team. But at the end of the day, their job is to help sell you homes. Their job is to find you investments and to sell you homes that makes money for them. So they may be a little skewed. They shouldn't be, but they might be a little biased about certain neighborhoods, trying to convince you that they're better than they actually are. So that's when you can ask other people. Your local property managers would be a great reference because they're the boots on the ground that are consistently working with these people, these tenants. So they'll have a very, very good knowledge about what neighborhoods are doing better than others. And then your real estate lawyer, again, is another person that is a good person to figure out, what local areas may or may not be worth investing in. So I highly recommend you talk with your real estate team, and that is part of your due diligence, is asking the locals what they believe of certain areas. That way you can make an informed decision for yourself about what neighborhood you want to go in for. Then the next piece of due diligence, once you've found the neighborhood, you've now narrowed that microscope even more. Now you're ready to make an offer on a specific home that you find. Now you need to do the due diligence of that specific home. So once you've decided that this home is right for you, you go ahead and make an offer. Let's say you want to make $100,000 and you go under contract. That offer is accepted. You and the seller work out terms, no problem. Well, now you need a way out because you may not have actually seen the property. And that way out is going to be a couple different ways. One, you can do a financial contingency. And this would be a bank, you putting in the contract a financial contingency that you can obtain financing for that property. If you cannot obtain financing, then the seller will release you of your duties to buy the property and give you your earnest money back. And the other contingency would be an inspection contingency. And this is, I highly, highly recommend that you keep all of your contingencies, keep your inspection contingency, unless you are absolutely sure that you don't need one, which can make you way more competitive when offering on a home. But most sellers will understand that you're going to keep the contingency. The reason you keep the contingency is because not everything is as it seems in the photos online. So if you're an out-of-state investor, you find a $100,000 home that you really like in pictures, and you say, oh, this property doesn't need much work. Oh, it's pretty turnkey. And then you hire an inspector, and then he finds, which is their job to find a laundry list of issues, but he finds a laundry list of issues, and you figure out that it may need a new roof in 2 years, or you find out that there's missing shingles, or it needs a new HVAC unit. And before you know it, in those 2 years, you could be out $10,000 to $20,000, and you did not expect that. When everything at face value looks good, but your inspector found some pressing matters, and the seller knew that those expenses were about to come, and the seller went ahead and got rid of them. Is trying to get rid of the property before they're the ones that are, bared with that burden. And so that seller's trying to list the property and get it off their hands. I again recommend you keep those inspection contingencies, because a $400, $500 inspection just saved you $20,000. Now you can go back to the table and renegotiate terms with the seller. If you never include any of those inspection contingencies, then you'll never be able to go back to the seller to adjust the price. So if your inspector finds that it's going to need a new HVAC in a year or 2 years, and then a new roof in a year or two, you can go back to the seller and say, hey, this isn't fair to me. I was buying a $100,000 home thinking it was turnkey and there was no issues. You can go back and say, how about we do 80? How about we do 90, or whatever you're comfortable with? And they can choose whether or not to take it. If they don't take it, you've got to make a choice. Are you willing to risk the fact that you may have to make those extreme capital expenditures, or hopefully they last a couple more years than anticipated? Or do you back out? Because if you look at it from the point of backing out, and some people will say, I just spent $400 to $500 for no reason. Well, I look at it as and say, I just spent $400 to $500 that saved my ass on a $20,000 investment, a $20,000 capital expense rather, because those capital expenses are not value. Like, you don't put money into capital expenditures and expect to get that back in rent. That's not how it works. People don't care that the roof just got redone. It was supposed to be good anyway. So that's important to understand. You definitely need those contingencies. Unless you know that you're going to do a complete remodel of the home, the HVAC and the roof are going to be, major expenses. But if you anticipated to get those done anyway, and it still makes your investment work, then at that time you might be willing or able to take away the inspection contingency. Maybe your real estate agent has a, wife or husband that's extremely good in contracting, and they can walk the property with the agent, and they can give you a better idea as to whether or not you're going to need an inspection. They can kind of be that, quote unquote, non-licensed inspector to help you figure out how much money is going to need to go into the remodel. But with somebody there that can give you that little insight, it could save you the $400 to $500, because you're going to have to completely remodel the property anyway. Because if it was in your investment to make the numbers work, then why spend the money on the inspection? At that point, it doesn't even make sense. But I highly recommend you at least have somebody that knows what they're doing, that walks the property in terms of construction, a construction expert that knows what they're doing, to walk the property for you or with you, to give you an idea as to how much money that those expenses are going to be. Because also, if you anticipate that a new roof is $20,000, and they go under the roof and find that, there's 6 joists that are, off center, you may need to repair that, which is going to take even more money and more, time and et cetera. It's going to keep your property on the market longer when you turn around and sell it, or, whatever the case is, whatever your strategy is. So, the due diligence of having the inspector, in my opinion, is invaluable. It is invaluable. That $400 to $500 expense is very minimal compared to the amount of expense that those expenditures will cost. So This was really a short episode. I wanted to explain to you guys really the importance of going through the due diligence and just not taking anything for at face value. Go into each and every situation, having done as much research as you can. Be as knowledgeable as you possibly can without actually have, if you can't personally be there. If you can personally be there, that's even better. Driving the property, driving the neighborhoods, figuring out, you know, what kind of people are hanging around during all different times of the day or night. What does that property look like at 9 a.m.? What does that property look like at 1 p.m. or 10 p.m.? Just to drive by to see how it goes. If it's very peaceful and quiet, Monday through Sunday, you should be golden. So I hope this episode was helpful. Always do your due diligence, and I will see you next week. Thank you. The advice and recommendations I offer are intended to be informative and educational, drawing from my own experiences in the real estate market. It is crucial to recognize that every investment decision carries risk and outcomes may vary. I am not a financial advisor, and the information provided during these podcast episodes is not intended as financial, legal, or professional advice. It is your responsibility to conduct thorough due diligence, seek the advice of qualified financial professionals, and make informed decisions based on your individual financial situation and goals.